on private payer coverage in the US, and then I'll cover some of the dynamics in the EU as well. I think before we get to sort of the private payer coverage dynamics, I wanted to start with just the evolution of oncology testing and where we see it going. I think we're really coming from a place where testing in oncology has been focused on single markers and hotspot panels, and this is really, focused on unique patient populations tested with specific methods, for example, EGFR, PCR, and obviously limits on tissue availability have made this a challenge and less sustainable over the long term. We've been migrating to a multimodality testing approach where you're seeing oncologists and labs perform a mix of different test methods, giving a better picture of the patient and possible reflex test patterns, with some tests being prioritized because of their ease of use or affordable costs or even tissue availability. I think over time, and we're already beginning this migration towards much broader use of NGS testing and a place over the long term where NGS increasingly dominates traditional methods, particularly driven by multi-gene biomarkers such as TMB and HRD. We also may see a migration, for example, an indication-specific approach where all non-small cell lung cancers would get a comprehensive panel, let's say, while urothelial cancers may be driven by a select biomarker approach. So it's really an evolution from a primarily single marker environment and tumor specific testing to an increase in use of broad next generation sequencing to define the genomic profile of a patient's cancer. I think underlying all of this will really be the deployment of informatics to create genotypic and phenotypic coverage policy decisions, and I think this is really in contrast to the Medicare environment that Bruce has covered. For private payers, our commercial insurers vary pretty dramatically from Medicare coverage decisions. And I think behind this is that, insurers obviously on the private side may opt to create explicit positive coverage. They may create explicit negative coverage, or forego developing policy at all for a diagnostic test. I think that in addition to that, coverage policies can address an entire category of tests, for example, all prostate cancer biomarker expression tests, or may only revolve around one specific test. And commercial insurers use a variety of tools to evaluate clinical utility, with these payers often deferring to recommendations provided by prominent societies such as NCCN and ASCO. You can see on the right here some of the clinical utility tools that are used to assess our clinical utility: published studies, of course, health technology assessments, guidelines, society recommendations, and of course Medicare coverage decision. So they all get considered as part of the assessment from private payers. I think the lack of continuity across Medicare and commercial coverage decisions for advanced diagnostics definitely highlights the difference in evidence requirements for payers. So I think for innovators, you're seeing obviously a range of approaches even within Medicare, and that becomes more complex as we move into the private payer realm.